A lioness begged a park ranger to save her mate. The reason behind it left everyone speechless. In the vast wilderness of Grand Teton National Park, a story unfolded that challenged everything we know about wild animals. Ryan Mitchell felt his heart pound as the sleek female lioness rose on her hind legs just 20 feet away. Her golden eyes locked on his. At 30, 5 years old, with 10 years as a senior park ranger in America's iconic Grand Teton, he had witnessed countless wildlife encounters, but nothing like this. The lioness, a graceful adult with a tawny coat, showed no signs of aggression. Instead, she appeared to be signaling something urgent. Her front paws lifted in a gesture that looked almost like a plea. Defying every instinct, Ryan knew about these predators. The moment began 40 minutes earlier during Ryan's late afternoon patrol. In a remote western section of the park, alerts about unusual lion activity had drawn him to this rugged area. Far from visitor trails and close to zones where illegal trappers occasionally operated, he stepped out of his truck to examine strange tracks when he heard a low, rumbling call from a female lion. Protocol demanded immediate retreat to the vehicle. But the vocalization carried an odd rhythm, a persistent repetition that stirred a vague memory from his field notes. Though he could not place it, against procedure, he moved forward cautiously, radio clipped to his belt, prepared for an emergency call. That was when he spotted her. A familiar lioness the rangers monitored as Sierra for her nocturnal prowess. Sierra was a prime female around 7 years old, holding a territory spanning several miles of grassland. Rangers had tracked her since she joined the pride, noting her as a skilled hunter. But now, Sierra paced restlessly along the edge of a thick sagebrush patch, glancing back before locking eyes with Ryan. When he attempted to return to his truck, she circled ahead, blocking his path, not with menace, but as if urging him to remain. Then she rose tall on her hind legs once more, paws extended in that eerie motion that froze Ryan in place, his breathing shallow. "Easy, Sierra," Ryan whispered, his hand inching toward the dart, gun holstered at his hip, a standard precaution for tense situations, though he had never imagined using it in quite this way. "What has you so worked up?" As if in response, Sierra dropped to all fours and took several steps toward the brush, then turned to look back. When Ryan stayed rooted, she repeated the movement, advancing and waiting expectantly. Ryan's training warred with the evidence before him. It appeared she was trying to lead him somewhere. "This cannot be happening," he muttered, raising his radio, but hesitating. How could he explain a wild lioness behaving as though she required his assistance? Before he could decide, Sierra emitted a deep, mournful rumble that pierced him, a sound filled with desperation that transcended the boundary between species. In a decision that would later rattle park authorities across the United States, Ryan followed her, maintaining distance, dart, gun at the ready, radio prepared for any sign of trouble. Before we dive into this incredible tale, tell me in the comments, what time is it, where you're watching, and from which city? I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. If it grips you, smash that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment your thoughts to join the conversation on these amazing wildlife moments. As the sun dipped low over the Grand Teton horizon, Ryan kept pace behind Sierra through the uneven terrain. Sagebrush snagged at his pants legs, rocks shifted under his boots, and the fading light made every shadow appear deeper. Sierra moved with clear intent, pausing every few yards to glance back, her ears flicking as though confirming he remained close. Ryan's hand stayed near the radio, thumb hovering over the transmit button. Yet he refrained from speaking. After roughly 15 minutes, the sagebrush thinned into a small open area ringed by low boulders. Sierra halted at the edge and released a single low huff. Ryan froze, his eyes adjusting to the dimmer light. In the center of the clearing lay another lion, a large male stretched out on his side. His breathing came in shallow rasps, ribs prominent beneath the coat. Blood darkened the ground around his right foreleg, where a heavy cable snare had bitten deep. The metal jaws locked tight, and the chain wrapped around a solid juniper stump. The male's eyes were half open, glazed, tongue slightly extended. He had been there at least 2 days, judging by the dried blood and the flies clustered at the wound. Sierra moved to the male's head, lowered herself beside him, and began nuzzling his muzzle with slow, deliberate strokes. She pressed her forehead against his, then licked gently at the corner of his mouth. The male managed a weak rumble in reply, barely audible. Ryan crouched low at the clearing's edge, binoculars pressed to his eyes. The snare had sliced through skin and muscle, exposing tendon in places. Swelling had begun, the leg already hot and discolored. Infection would spread rapidly in this environment. Without intervention, the male would not survive another day, perhaps not even the night. Ryan lowered the binoculars and noticed something else. Sierra's belly carried a slight roundness, the kind visible only when a lioness was well into pregnancy, 3, perhaps 4 weeks along. That altered the picture entirely. She was not merely protecting a mate, she was safeguarding the future of her pride. The urgency in her actions suddenly made complete sense. She had recognized that the same humans responsible for the snare might also possess the means to remove it. Ryan keyed the radio at last. His voice, low but steady, bass. "This is Mitchell. I've got a code red in Sector 14 West. Adult male lion in a snare. Severe leg injury. Conscious but critical. Female present. Non-aggressive. Requesting vet team and backup immediately." Emily Harper's voice cut through the static. "Ryan. Copy. Team mobilizing now. ETA. About 45 minutes. Confirm the male's status and maintain distance. Is the female displaying aggression? Negative on aggression." Ryan replied. "She led me here. And Emily. She's pregnant. Belly. Noticeably rounded." A brief pause. "Understood. That explains a great deal. Do not approach without the team. We're dealing with 2 adults and potential cubs in utero. Stay back. Monitor vitals if possible." Ryan acknowledged, but his gaze remained fixed on Sierra. She had positioned herself between the male, Teton, as the Rangers called him for his size and steady temperament, and the direction Ryan had approached from, as though standing guard. Titan attempted to lift his head once, failed, and settled back with a groan. Sierra resumed, nuzzling, her movements careful and almost rhythmic. Ryan edged a few steps closer, remaining outside what he judged as striking range. He could smell the metallic tang of blood mingled with the dry dust of the clearing. The snare chain had pulled tight during Titan's struggles, embedding the teeth deeper with each thrash. Puncture wounds wept fluid. The male's breathing grew more labored, each inhalation shorter than the last. Ryan spoke softly, more to himself than anything. "Hang in there. Big guy. Help is coming." Sierra's ears swiveled toward him, but she did not leave Titan's side. He raised the radio once more. "Emily. Update. Male declining rapidly. Breathing shallow. Leg swelling severe. Signs of early shock. Female remains calm. Staying with him. Any way to shorten the ETA?" "Working on it," she responded, Helicopter fueling. But wind is picking up. 40 minutes minimum. Can you confirm the snare type, cable or wire? Cable. Heavy gauge, poacher style. No breakaway. Chain anchored to a juniper, about 8 inches thick. Bring bolt cutters if available. But do not cut until the team arrives. And Ryan. Be careful. A trapped lion remains dangerous. Avon half. Dead. And the female. If she perceives you as a threat, now that you're close, instinct could take over. I know, Ryan said, but she isn't behaving like a threat. She's acting as though she's waiting for me to do something. Silence stretched for several seconds. When Emily spoke again, her tone had shifted. Damn it, Ryan. If you're certain about the female's behavior and the male's condition, document everything on body cam. But if anything feels off, back out immediately. We're pushing the helo. 20. 5 minutes now. Ryan glanced at Sierra. She met his gaze, held it, then lowered her head to tighten once more. He reached for the bolt cutters in his pack. Body cam rolling. Proceeding with caution. Ryan knelt at the leg, maintaining a low profile. Sierra watched every movement, but she did not rise or shift into a defensive stance. She simply observed. Up close, the damage appeared worse. The cable had sawed nearly to bone in one spot. Dried blood crusted the fur. Fresh seepage still oozing. Titan's paw twitched once, involuntarily, and he emitted a low, pained rumble. Ryan examined the mechanism. The lock was rusted but still functional. Cutting the chain would prove easy. Opening the jaws without tearing additional flesh required precision. He possessed the tools. Yet one misstep could cause the male to bleed out faster or lash out in agony. Sierra huffed softly, almost in acknowledgement. She settled back beside Titan's head, resuming the gentle grooming. Ryan took one careful step forward, then another, keeping his movements slow and predictable. Sierra remained in place, close enough to intervene if desired. But she did not. She merely shifted slightly, opening a clear line to Titan's trapped leg, then looked back at Ryan as though granting permission. When Ryan was about 15 feet away, Sierra rose slowly. For a heartbeat, Ryan tensed, hand dropping to the dart gun. But she only stepped aside a little more. Providing space, Ryan swallowed. I'm coming in. Nice and easy. He approached in a half crouch, eyes flicking between the two lions. Sierra did not retreat. She simply watched. As darkness crept in, Ryan remained knelt beside Titan's trapped leg, bolt cutters in hand. The air cooled rapidly, carrying the sharp scent of sage and blood. Sierra stayed close, her body positioned to shield Titan while leaving Ryan room to work. She observed without flinching as he positioned the cutters on the chain first, the thick cable resisting the blades. Until he applied steady pressure, the metal parted with a sharp snap, the chain falling away in a coil. Titan flinched at the sound, a low groan escaping him. But he did not lash out. Sierra pressed her side against his, steadying him with her weight. Ryan moved to the snare jaws next, careful not to jerk the metal. He worked one side open slowly, then the other, prying the teeth free, inch by inch. Fresh blood welled as the pressure released. The wound raw and ragged. Titan's leg trembled, muscle exposed in places. But the male remained still, breathing heavily through his nose. Ryan set the cutters aside and reached for his field kit. He retrieved antiseptic wipes, gauze pads, and a small tube of antibiotic ointment intended for human use, but better than nothing. His hands shook slightly as he cleaned the deepest lacerations, wiping away dirt and dried blood. The wound looked far worse up close, Deep punctures. Torn tissue. Early signs of swelling indicating infection had already taken hold. Necrosis would follow swiftly, without proper care. Sierra shifted closer, her nose inches from Ryan's arm. Yet, she made no move to interfere. Instead, she lowered her head and licked once at Titan's ear. A quiet gesture that seemed to calm him. Ryan paused, meeting her eyes for a second. She held the contact, then returned to grooming Titan's muzzle. He applied the ointment with gentle dabs, covering the exposed areas as best he could. Then wrapped the leg loosely with gauze to keep dirt out. Titan's breathing steadied fractionally, though the effort cost him. Each rise of his chest appeared painful. Ryan injected a dose of broad spectrum antibiotic from his kit into the muscle of Titan's uninjured shoulder, the needle sliding in with minimal resistance. The dosage was human. Scale, likely insufficient for a lion of this size. But it might buy time until the veterinary team arrived with stronger medications. Throughout the process, Ryan kept his movements deliberate, narrating quietly to himself for the body cam. Chain cut, jaws removed, wound cleaned and dressed, antibiotic administered, male stable but weak, female remains non-aggressive, maintaining contact. His voice remained level, but inside, his mind raced through the consequences. 10 years of clean records, and now he had crossed a line that could end his career. Director Brooks would not let this pass. Sierra observed every action. When Ryan finished bandaging and stepped back, she rose slowly, circled Titan once as though inspecting the work, then approached Ryan directly. She stopped a foot away, lowered her massive head, and pressed her forehead against his thigh for a brief moment. Firm, deliberate pressure, then released. She stepped back to Titan's side without looking away. Ryan remained frozen, pulse humming. The contact had been brief but unmistakable. He had felt the warmth of her fur, the controlled strength behind it. No threat, no aggression, just acknowledgement. Headlights appeared in the distance, slicing through the darkness. Engines rumbled closer, vehicles bouncing over rough ground. Ryan stood, hands raised slightly to signal the team. Emily Harper arrived first, leaping from the lead SUV with her kit already open. 2 assistants followed, carrying sedation gear and stretchers. Emily approached cautiously, eyes on Sierra and Titan. Ryan, what the hell did you do? I couldn't wait, he said. He was crashing. The female stayed calm the entire time. Emily knelt beside Titan, flashlight beams steady on the leg. She examined the dressing, peeled back one edge, and winced. You removed the snare cleanly, but the damage is deep. Necrosis already beginning. Tissue dying back. Good decision on the field meds. But we need to stabilize him quickly. She looked up at Sierra, who had not moved from Titan's side. The lioness watched Emily work without baring teeth or growling. Emily shook her head slowly. This is not normal. She's allowing us near her mate. No posturing, no charge. She's trusting. One assistant prepared a dart gun while the other set up monitoring equipment. Emily glanced at Ryan. Body cam footage, rolling the whole time. Brooks is en route. He won't be pleased. As if summoned. Director Michael Brooks's vehicle pulled up next. The 55-year-old director stepped out, face set in hard lines. Flashlight in hand, he strode toward the clearing, eyes flicking from Titan to Sierra to Ryan. Ranger Mitchell, Brooks said, voice tight. You were ordered to stand down. I was, Ryan replied, but he wouldn't have made it. Brooks halted when Sierra shifted slightly, positioning herself again between Titan and the newcomers. Yet she did not growl or advance. She simply watched, ears forward, tail low. Brooks stared. The female. She's not reacting. She's been like that since I arrived. Ryan said, led me straight to him. Stayed through everything. Emily completed her initial assessment and stood. Director. The male requires transport immediately. Leg damage severe. Surgery necessary. Female is pregnant. By appearance. Separating them could induce severe stress. But right now, she's cooperating. Brooks rubbed his jaw. Eyes on Sierra. The lioness lowered her head to Titan once more. A quiet huff escaping her. Brooks exhaled sharply. Load him up. Keep her in sight. But no risks. If she changes, dart her. The team moved swiftly. They sedated Titan lightly to facilitate movement, then slid him onto a reinforced stretcher. Sierra followed every step, staying close but never crowding. When they lifted Titan, she rose and walked alongside, matching their pace toward the vehicles. Ryan assisted in securing the stretcher in the transport rig. Sierra paused at the open door, looking inside at Titan. Then back at Ryan. She huffed once, soft and low. Emily secured the final strap. She's following. We can't force her away without risking a confrontation. Brooks observed the scene. Anger giving way to something closer to disbelief. Load up. Slow convoy. Allow her to trail if she chooses. Safety vehicles flank her at all times. The engines started. Sierra walked beside the transport as it pulled away slowly, her eyes fixed on Titan through the side window. Ryan rode in the lead vehicle, glancing back every few seconds. The lioness kept pace, never falling behind. A pregnant female refusing to abandon her mate. As night fully enveloped the park, the small convoy rolled slowly from the clearing. Headlights carving narrow paths through the darkness. The transport vehicle carrying Titan led, with Ryan in the passenger seat of the lead SUV. Eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. Sierra followed immediately behind, her form visible in the red taillights as she maintained a steady trot alongside the rig. She never fell more than a few yards back, adjusting her pace precisely to match the deliberate crawl of the vehicles. The route wound through low hills and open grassland, terrain offering little cover. Twice, Sierra vanished into a dip or behind a cluster of boulders, only to reappear ahead, cutting across the path as though scouting. Each time she disappeared, Ryan tensed, expecting her to lose interest or return to familiar ground. Instead, she re-emerged, sometimes on the left flank, sometimes right, always oriented toward the transport. Her movements appeared purposeful, almost calculated, pausing at certain spots, sniffing the ground briefly, then continuing. One of the junior rangers riding with Ryan leaned forward. She's tracking something. Look at her nose. Down low, then up again. That's not just following the vehicle. Ryan nodded without taking his eyes off her. She's picking up scent trails, probably old prints from whoever set the snare. She's not letting it go. The convoy covered the first hour without incident. The pace kept under 10 miles per hour to avoid stressing Titan or forcing Sierra to sprint. Wind picked up, carrying dust across the headlights. Sierra remained consistent, her silhouette steady in the glow. At one point, she veered off the track entirely, disappearing for nearly 5 minutes into a shallow ravine. The driver slowed further, waiting. When she returned, she carried something in her mouth, a scrap of torn fabric, dark and stained. She dropped it at the edge of the road, directly in the path of the lead vehicle, then resumed her position beside the transport. Ryan radioed back. She just left a piece of cloth Looks like clothing material. Could be from the trapper. Emily's voice came through from the transport rig. Mark the spot. We'll send a team back at first light. If it's evidence, fish and wildlife will want it. The second hour dragged slower as the road climbed toward higher elevation. Sierra's breathing became visible in the cold air. Steady puffs in the beam of the following lights. She never lagged, never strayed far. When the convoy hit a brief stretch of gravel that required a slight speed increase, she adjusted instantly, lengthening her stride without effort. Titan remained sedated inside the rig, monitors beeping softly through the open channel. By the time the facility lights appeared on the horizon, Sierra had covered nearly the full distance without pause. The wildlife medical compound sat behind high perimeter fencing. Gates, reinforced. Floodlights, bright against the night. As the transport pulled up to the entrance, Sierra slowed, then stopped just outside the barrier line. She sat on her haunches, facing the gate, eyes locked on the vehicle where Titan lay. Ryan stepped out first. Approaching the fence slowly, Sierra did not rise or shift position. She simply watched him, then turned her gaze back to the transport as the team began unloading Titan onto a gurney. Emily directed the move, keeping her voice low. Get him inside fast. We need imaging and surgery prep. Female's still right there. Don't spook her. Brooks arrived moments later, pulling his vehicle close. He stood at the fence line, arms crossed, staring at Sierra. She met his look briefly, then returned to watching the gurney disappear through the gate. Brooks spoke quietly to Ryan. She's not leaving. No, sir. She's waiting. Brooks rubbed the back of his neck. We can't allow a wild adult lion inside the compound. Safety protocols are non-negotiable. But darting her now, after everything, it feels wrong. Emily joined them, kit slung over her shoulder. She's pregnant. Separating her from him could cause severe stress. Cortisol, spike, possible miscarriage risk. But we need to prioritize staff safety. Brooks considered for a long moment. Deploy humane deterrence only. Reflective barriers. Low frequency sound. No projectiles. If she tries to breach, we reassess. Otherwise, let her stay where she is. Post guards. Keep lights on her position. The team set up quickly. Portable panels angled to reflect light. Speakers emitting a soft, pulsed tone designed to discourage approach without pain. Sierra remained seated, unmoved by the setup. She watched the facility doors close behind Titan, then settled fully onto the ground, head resting on her paws, eyes fixed on the building. Ryan stood at the fence a moment longer, watching her there, alone in the floodlight, belly rounded with unborn cubs. Waiting for a mate she refused to abandon. He felt a pull in his chest. His own family waited back in Bozeman. Wife and 2 kids who understood late nights and sudden calls, but never quite grasped the weight of decisions like this one. Seeing Sierra hold vigil made the comparison sharp. A mother protecting what was left of her family, trusting strangers because no other choice remained. A new vehicle pulled up quietly. Natalie Reed stepped out, 28 years old. The park's newest wildlife behaviorist, camera gear already in hand. She had been called in en route, briefed over the radio about the female's behavior. Natalie approached the group at the fence, nodding to Brooks and Emily. I came as soon as I heard. Body cam footage from Ryan, transmitted on the way. Ryan said. She led me to him, stayed through the field treatment, followed the entire convoy. Never once showed aggression. Natalie set up a tripod just inside the fence line, lens trained on Sierra. This is unprecedented. Males protect prides, but a pregnant female actively seeking human intervention and maintaining contact like this, we need to document every second. If she's distinguishing intent, harm, from help, that's cognitive processing. We've barely seen in wild lions. She adjusted focus as Sierra shifted slightly, adjusting her position to keep the facility door in view. Natalie spoke softly, almost to herself. She's not just waiting, she's monitoring. The group stood in silence for a minute, watching. Sierra's ears flicked at distant coyote calls, but she never looked away from the building. Floodlights cast long shadows across her form, highlighting the subtle swell of her belly. The next morning, at the facility, sunlight filtered through the high chain link fencing, casting long shadows across the perimeter where Sierra still sat. She had not moved far during the night, only shifting position occasionally to keep the main building in view. Her coat looked dusty from the long trek, but her posture remained alert. Ears swiveled toward any sound from inside. Natalie Reed arrived early. Camera equipment already set up on a tripod just inside the fence. She reviewed overnight footage on her tablet. Sierra's steady vigil, the occasional low huff when distant vehicle noise carried across the compound. Natalie adjusted the lens, framing Sierra against the rising sun. Staff began construction on the observation area shortly after dawn. Reinforced panels were positioned to form a secure corridor, leading from the perimeter to a walled enclosure adjacent to Titan's recovery room. Transparent sections allowed clear sight lines, while multiple layers of fencing ensured separation. Remote. The controlled gates were installed along the path, each one sequenced to open progressively. Emergency release mechanisms and monitoring cameras were added at every junction. Natalie worked alongside the crew, directing placement of the viewing panels. She positioned one large window directly facing Titan's enclosure, ensuring Sierra would see him once inside. When the structure neared completion, Natalie approached the fence line slowly, holding a tablet displaying live feed from inside. Titan, lying on a padded table, monitors beeping steadily. Surgical team prepping. Sierra rose at the sight of Natalie. Ears forward. Natalie stopped at a safe distance, held the tablet higher so the screen faced outward. Titan appeared on the display, chest rising and falling evenly. Sierra stepped closer to the fence, nose inches from the chain link. Eyes locked on the image. She let out a series of soft chuffs, short, rhythmic vocalizations that carried through the morning air. Natalie lowered the tablet slightly. She's responding. That's affiliative calling. She recognizes him. Sierra paced once along the fence, then stopped directly in front of the newly installed access gate. Natalie keyed the remote. The first gate slid open with a low hum. Sierra hesitated for a second, glanced back toward the main building, then walked through without prompting. She moved deliberately down the corridor, pausing at each subsequent gate as it opened in sequence. Always keeping visual contact with the tablet feed, Natalie held ahead of her. When she reached the final enclosure, separated from Titan's room by reinforced glass, Sierra approached the transparent panel. Titan lay visible on the other side, still under light sedation, bandaged leg elevated. Sierra pressed her forehead to the glass, chuffing again, deeper this time, more sustained. Her tail flicked once, low and slow. Inside the surgical suite, Emily Harper led the team through the 4-hour procedure. They removed significant necrotic tissue from Titan's foreleg, debriding down to healthy muscle in places. Damaged tendon was repaired with sutures, drainage tubes inserted to prevent fluid buildup. Anesthesia risks were high. Titan's weakened state from blood loss and infection made monitoring critical. Vital signs dipped twice during the deeper cuts, but the team adjusted oxygen and fluids, bringing him back stable each time. Emily stepped out once to check progress on the observation side. Through the internal window, she saw Sierra seated directly in front of the glass, eyes fixed on Teton. Natalie stood nearby, camera rolling continuously. Natalie spoke quietly to Emily. She hasn't looked away since she entered. That's sustained attention we don't see in wild lions under stress. She's processing the environment. Gates, humans, glass, and still prioritizing visual contact with him. Emily nodded. If she stays this calm through recovery, we might avoid long-term separation issues. But we need to watch for signs of agitation as the sedation wears off. Natalie switched to a second camera angle, capturing Sierra's full posture. During playback, she paused on a frame where Sierra had briefly turned her head toward the perimeter fence during the night footage. In the background, barely visible in low light, a faint trail of footprints led away from the facility. Human boot prints, irregular spacing, suggesting someone moving quickly. Natalie zoomed in. Look at this. These weren't here when the convoy arrived. Someone approached the perimeter after we got back. The pattern matches the direction she was sniffing during the drive. She referenced with the scrap of fabric Sierra had dropped on the road. The material matched common workwear. Dark canvas, frayed edge. Natalie pulled up satellite overlays of the area. A faint vehicle track appeared on older imagery, leading to a pull-off near the ravine where Sierra had detoured. This isn't random. She's been tracking the same scent trail the whole way. If that's poacher sign, she may have followed it here deliberately. Emily reviewed the still. Report it to Brooks and Fish and Wildlife. If they set the snare, they could still be in the area. Evidence like this could tie them directly. The discussion moved to the conference room adjacent to the recovery wing. Brooks attended in person this time, reviewing the legal outcome first. The poachers in custody. Case closed on that front. Now the question is, what we do with these two? Emily updated on Titan. He's mobile enough for release. Leg function is 90%. No permanent damage. Natalie presented her behavioral analysis. The bond data is clear. Sierra's vocalizations, sustained proximity, seeking, and calm response to human presence around Titan indicate an exceptionally strong pair bond. Separation could cause severe distress, especially with her pregnancy advancing. She's now visibly closer to term, likely within weeks of delivery. Brooks studied the charts. Standard protocol is separate release to avoid aggression during transition, but nothing about this pair follows standard. Emily nodded. Coordinated release minimizes risk. They can reunite in familiar territory without added stress. Brooks turned to Ryan, who had joined the meeting. Your call started this. Thoughts? Ryan looked at the monitor showing Sierra at the glass. They've already proven they handle humans differently. Let them go together. The data supports it. Brooks considered for a long moment. Approved. Coordinated release. We'll monitor post. Release with collars and remote cameras. If anything changes, we intervene. Preparations began immediately. Collars were fitted during a brief sedation. Light tracking devices with GPS and heart rate sensors. Release site selection focused on the original territory, near a reliable water source, and prey concentrations. The plan: transport both simultaneously, open gates at the same moment, allow natural reunion. As the days counted down, Sierra's movements grew slower, her belly noticeably heavier. She spent more time lying near the glass, chuffing softly Whenever Titan approached from the other side, Titan responded by pressing his own body to the barrier, mirroring her posture. Natalie's final report summarized the observations. Abstract thinking demonstrated. Sierra distinguished harmful human action snare from corrective removal and care. She sought assistance, maintained contact, and guided behavior toward positive outcome. This suggests cognitive capacity beyond simple instinct. Brooks read the report in silence, then set it down. We've witnessed something rare. Whatever comes next, it changes how we approach these situations. The facility quieted in the evenings. Sierra stayed at her post, eyes on Teton, waiting for the day they would step out together. 3 weeks later, at dawn in the release site, the transport vehicles positioned in a wide clearing deep within the original territory. Acacia trees dotted the edges, providing shade and escape routes. Prey signs, fresh tracks and grazing herds were visible nearby, ensuring immediate hunting opportunities without excessive strain. The team worked methodically. Titan was loaded first, sedated lightly for transport comfort. Sierra followed in a separate rig, her movement slower now, belly heavy with impending birth. Collars transmitted steady signals, heart rates calm, no distress spikes. Gates opened simultaneously as the first light touched the grass. Titan emerged cautiously, shaking off the lingering effects of sedation. He paused at the threshold, scenting the air, ears swiveling. Sierra stepped out next, pausing only briefly before walking directly to him. They touched noses, then pressed foreheads together in a slow, deliberate greeting. Titan circled her once, sniffing her flanks, then stood beside her as if resuming guard. Ryan watched from a distant vantage point, binoculars steady. Titan turned his head toward the vehicles, amber eyes finding Ryan across the distance. The gaze held for several seconds, direct, unblinking, before Titan looked away, leading Sierra toward the tree line. The team remained silent as the pair moved off together, disappearing into the tall grass. No aggression surfaced, no hesitation. They simply walked away as a unit. Monitoring began immediately. Collars relayed location data every hour. The first week showed them settling into familiar patterns, resting in shaded spots during midday heat, hunting at dusk. Titan's leg held up under movement, no limp visible after the initial days. Sierra stayed close, her pace adjusted to his. 6 months later, Ryan returned to the same rise, overlooking the territory. Through high-powered lenses, he spotted the pair in the shade of an acacia. 3 cubs tumbled around them, 2 males and a female, play, fighting in short bursts, then collapsing in heaps. Titan lay watchful, head raised, scanning the horizon, while Sierra groomed one of the cubs. When a distant hyena call echoed, Titan stood immediately, positioning himself between the family and the sound. Sierra rose. Beside him, the cubs instinctively moving behind them. Ryan lowered the binoculars. The sight stayed with him as he drove back. What had started with a desperate lioness seeking help had ended with a family intact, thriving in the place they belonged. He reflected on the journey in quiet moments afterward. This experience showed him that compassion for wildlife builds stronger bonds between humans and nature, reminding us to protect it like our own family. Every act saves lives and teaches humility. Through his observations and the data collected, the story carried a clear value: acts of kindness, even when they break protocol, can change outcomes in ways science is only beginning to understand. It pushed back against assumptions that humans and wild animals exist in separate worlds. Instead, a single moment of recognition. Sierra, approaching a ranger, trusting enough to lead him to her mate, opened a path for intervention that preserved not just two lions, but an entire lineage. The poacher's conviction served as a reminder that real consequences follow when laws are ignored, while the cubs playing under the acacia proved that protection works when compassion guides it. The barrier between species narrowed in that clearing at dawn, and in the months that followed, it stayed that way, not through force, but through quiet persistence and the simple choice to act when it mattered.